And I'm gonna let everybody in. Okay, I think we got everybody. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's a month of service presentation of property taxes, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the a month of service collaboration. Also included in the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today, we have Ms. Cecile Carlson. Also, on behalf of our presenting partners with the Harris Central Appraisal District, we have Ms. Mabel Menifee, who will be presenting. Also, on behalf of the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, we have Ms. Jamie Duong, who will also be presenting. But also included in the partnership, we have Texas Legal Services Center, Houston Bar Association, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Lone Star Legal Aid, and the Earl Carl Institute. And together we make up a month of service. And basically, a month of service is the collaboration of all 9 organizations. We come together on a monthly basis and offer different workshops, resources to the community, information about asset protection, asset building, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that don't have access to a lot of information or don't know where to go for particular resources when they find themselves in need. So we collectively decided to come together several years ago in an effort to reach more people, to create a larger impact and get as much information out to the community as we possibly can. So at one point, we were in person. For those that don't know our history, we were in person in various communities, kind of traveling around the city. But of course, due to the pandemic, we had to transition to the virtual platform. The virtual platform, however, has allowed us the opportunity to um, reach even more people in surrounding counties and throughout the entire state of Texas. So the information that we do present on our workshops is relative to the entire state, even though you may be joining us from it's not just the city of Houston or for Harris County or anything like that, that the information is relative to everyone within the state. Also keep in mind that the information that we do present here is for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered any kind of legal advice or telling you what to do for your particular situation. However, we do encourage you to reach out to our legal service partners or to our presenters if you do find yourselves in need of some specific questions relative to your particular need. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions that you do have. We do ask that you have questions. We do ask that your questions be general in nature and not really specific, as we are on a public platform and we want to try to protect your privacy as much as we possibly can. So do keep that in mind, that we are recording this session as well as broadcasting live on our social media platforms on YouTube and sharing it on Facebook. So do keep that in mind. If you are joining us via Zoom, please feel free to type your question into the chat box, and someone will be addressing your questions, or we can address or ask aloud at the end of the presentation. Feel free to unmute yourself if you like, if you don't want to type, and you can ask your questions directly of the presenters. If you are joining us on YouTube or on Facebook, or if you emailed us questions in advance, I will make sure that those questions are read at the end of the presentation or get addressed at the end of the presentation as well. So with that being said, there's a lot of information that we're going to cover here today, and we want to thank you all for joining us, for coming back and continuing to support. Or if this is your first time here, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And we hope that you all get the information that you need that can assist with your property taxes, whatever that need or that issue may be. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and ask Ms. Cecile Carlson with the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods to introduce herself.
Thank you, Nia. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Cecile Carlson. I am the outreach coordinator here for the Department of Neighborhoods. I am very happy to be here today. Thankful to all of the partners for this collaboration. Like Nia said, there is a lot of really useful information that we want to make sure that the public has. And I know that we don't always have the opportunity to sit one-on-one with the experts. So this is a great collaboration, a great opportunity for the community to get informed and to learn about different topics. I am very excited for today's topic. Taxes, that is something that you don't want to play with and you don't want to get wrong. You want to make sure that your properties and your taxes are all squared off and that you know what you're doing. So I really do appreciate the partnership for bringing this information to the community and just welcome everybody on the behalf of the City of Houston, Mayor Whitmire, and of course our Director for the Department of Neighborhoods, Director Sims. And I'll pass it on to our presenters. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ms. Jamie, let's go ahead and have you introduce the other representatives from the tax office, and then Ms. Mabel will have you go, and then you can go into your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for making the time to be out here today. On behalf of Ms. Ann Harris-Bennett, I'd like to welcome you to this session. And with me here is Shay Pinkowski, who is our assistant manager for our customer service. My name is Jamie Duong, and our goal here, as always, is to provide you information that will be helpful to help you maximize your benefit of property ownership in Harris County. So stay tuned and join us, and we welcome you to your session. Thank you.
Okay.
Mabel?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mabel Menifee, and I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District. I'm in the Communication Services Department. And with me today in the chat room, and will be able to answer many of your questions, is Alicia Kellum. She is with our Help Bank, eBank, and also joining us probably in a bit will be Rosalind Alexander. So we're going to try to answer as many of your questions today as we can. Do keep in mind that the Property Tax Code of Texas is about almost 2 inches thick. And so we may not be able to answer each and every individual question, but if we cannot do that today, we'll certainly get with the appropriate resource here at the appraisal district and get an answer for you. So we're going to start out today with just kind of a basic overview of, and it's doing that, a basic overview of the, make sure I have that correct.
You have to hit the share button.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thought I did. And another share button. Okay, there we are. And then I would need to go from the beginning, or can you guys
From the beginning? Yes.
and do that all over?
Yep, you're good.
I'm good to go. All righty. So, Harris Central Appraisal District. Some of you might remember us as the Harris County Appraisal District. We changed our name several years ago to try to help people understand where we fall in the whole property tax process. Many people thought we are part of Harris County government. However, appraisal districts are not part of the local government. They are actually subdivisions of state government. So we actually take our marching orders from laws enacted by the state legislature, and as well as oversight from the Texas Comptroller's Office. There is an appraisal district in each and every county and that is set up for evaluating property for ad valorem tax purposes. So just a little bit of background about that. And you know, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what property taxes are. If you don't, one of the reasons that property taxes in Texas tend to play a little bit of an oversized role, more so than they do in many other states, is because in Texas there is no state income tax. So property taxes are what funds local services such as schools and roadways, police, firemen, that sort of thing. So they fund most of the local services, or a big part of their budgets. And just kind of the responsibilities of CADs like Harris Central are to appraise all county property, residential, commercial, as well as ag, industrial, and business personal property for for ad valorem tax purposes. We are required to do so at 100% of market value each year, and that is usually based on the condition of the property, whatever condition it is in, as of January the 1st of each year. That's a big part of our role. We also administer exemptions, and exemptions are things that can property owners can be eligible for that will reduce their taxes based on certain conditions, ownership conditions, age, status, etc. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as I continue into the presentation. We also, and this is what we do to lead up to doing something called certifying the appraisal rolls. So what we do is pass on what is considered the amount of value property-wise in Harris County, and that goes to all of the taxing jurisdictions. When we talk about jurisdictions, we mean the city, the state, all of the folks that you will receive a tax bill from, city, county, school district, in some cases, emergency districts. You may live in a MUD district. And this allows those taxing jurisdictions to then look at it and then set their rates based on what their budgetary needs are going to be for that year. So talk about that in terms of, there's always a deadline going on because we do this annually. So January the 1st is what I mentioned in terms of the date of appraisal. That's the value, the date that the value is based on. We have something called the protest deadline, and that's usually on May 15th. Protest deadlines are what you would file when you received your property valuation notice and you did not agree. You felt perhaps it should be lower. In some cases, someone might feel it should be higher, but usually it's because folks feel it should be lower. So you have until, and those are usually sent out late March, early April, and you have until May 15th if you disagree to file something called a protest or an appeal, but generally they're known as protests. You also, if you receive it a little bit later than you don't, say April 16th or 17th, after that date, you always have 30 days from the date of the notice, what's printed on your notice, to file the protest. So you have whichever comes later. And then usually in October, November, we're getting ready, or the tax assessor collectors in your area are getting ready to mail out the tax bills once the jurisdictions set their rates. And then, of course, come February, if you have not paid taxes for that year, they become delinquent. And Jamie's going to talk a little bit more about that at the second presentation. As I mentioned before, HCAT is required by the tax code of Texas to value property at 100% of the market value. The state is going to be always looks over our shoulders to make sure that they conduct a biennial markets value study to ensure that we are complying, that we are within that range of 100%. We do this in Texas by a process called mass appraisal, and it's always important to remember that when your property is valued, it's the value that is derived by HCAT is going to be based on the sales in and around where you live on similar properties. In Harris County, HCAT, we value 1.9 million parcels annually. There are 1.9 million parcels within Harris County, and there are actually over 500 taxing jurisdictions. Most of you will know about the 4 or 5 that you generally pay to, but depending on where you live, you may pay to different ones or additional ones. So there are over 500 jurisdictions that HCAT supports. Just a quick look at this is what you get each year. I mentioned about the value notices. This is what one of those will look like when you receive it in the mail. If you're a property owner, you've seen this one. You saw this one back in the spring when they were mailed out. HCAT always gives you what is considered your appraised value and your market value. The market value is actually what HCAD determines. The appraised value, it's important to remember that the appraised value is actually the value your tax bill is going to be based on. But the appraised value could be lower than the market value when you have exemptions in place. And we're going to talk about exemptions in a little bit. Exemptions and something called a 10% annual increase cap can keep that appraised value lower for most of the while, lower than the market value. It's important to remember that market value tends to be chasing the appraised value, but the appraised value is very important in terms of making sure that you aren't overpaying and that you've got your exemptions in place. It could be, it's usually, as I mentioned, it's usually lower because of you get a 10% appraisal increase cap. And that basically means that in times of the year, times which we've all seen in recent years, the values in a lot of communities are going up and up for any variety of reasons, but mainly because a lot of real estate in Harris County is being sold, and it's being sold for more and more. You may have bought your home in 2001, and the same similar house could sell in 2024. And of course, it's going to be a lot more because you're looking at 23 years worth of growing values. So that can sometimes be the reasons for some of those jumps, but the cap is what keeps it from going up more than 10% in any given year. And that's what you get with a homestead exemption, as well as we're going to talk about some other options, exemption options that you may be eligible for. I talked about the appraised value. We talked about the market value, which is what HCAD establishes each year on the property, is the value at which the property would sell to a willing buyer on a basic business arm's length transaction. So we established that annual market value. And it's also important to remember that when you do protests, those protests are going to be based on that market value, not that appraised value, because the appraised value has already been built in. The methods and types of protests, should you want to protest next year, we're probably a little bit out. It's probably much too late for any protests this year. We've settled most of those. You got that valuation notice in April or May. So you had that period at which to protest. If you did not then, you may wish to do so next year. And it's important to remember that you can do it a number of ways. You can do it online fairly easily through something called iFile or iSettle. You can do the iSettle part in lieu of something called an informal hearing. iFile is the easiest and first step you can take, where you simply you can file that protest online and actually submit your information with it. And then HCAT can get back to you. If they're able to make you an offer, they will. If they're unable to, you can be scheduled for an informal or a formal hearing. And we'll talk about what the difference between those two. You can also opt for something called an iSettle, which is an option in lieu of the informal hearing. If you opt for the iSettle, then you kind of forego your informal hearing. And HCAT will provide you with an offer. If you don't like the offer, then you can always be scheduled for that formal hearing with the Appraisal Review Board. Now, the ARB, as we call it, or the Appraisal Review Board, is basically a group of citizens who have been selected by in previous years, it's been an administrative law judge. Beginning this year, it's going to be by the HCAD board. And these folks are going to sit in 3-person or 1-person panels and listen to your appeal, your reasoning for why you don't think the value should be where it is. They're also going to listen to HCAD's case from an appraiser saying why the district put the value where it is. And then they make the decision in terms of whether to reduce or let it remain the same. If that does not work, you do have some additional methods that include arbitration. as well as litigation. It's important to remember too that once you get past the ARB stage, then generally there is a financial requirement that comes into play when you want to go further than that. So let's talk, so that's kind of how the appraisal system, the valuation and protest system within HCAD works. Let's talk about now how you can save money from the get-go without with your property. So exemptions, what are they and how do they save you money? How can you get them? I mentioned earlier that HCAD administers exemptions as well. And an exemption is something that exempts a portion of the property from taxation on your primary residence. So it's basically a discount on your taxes. It's used by the taxing authorities, and they subtract that when they get ready to calculate your tax bill. They subtract that from the market value. So as I said, they reduce the appraised value before the tax rates are actually applied. And just looking down, this is some of the most common ones that that homeowners are eligible for. We'll talk a little bit about those, but the most common being the general resident homestead exemption. There's the over 65. There's something called an over 55 surviving spouse disability exemption. There are various disabled veterans exemptions that are going to be based on a percentage of their disability. And then there's some other service-related exemptions as well. The general resident homestead exemption, as I said, is the most popular one. All you need to do is own and occupy the home. It has to be your primary residence. We do require that you submit some documentation to receive it. It's basically just the proof of ownership and the driver's license of the current owners. The driver's license has to match, the address on the driver's license has to match that of the property. And this is when you're going to get that 10% appraisal increase cap. You also are going to get that $1,000 school tax exemption. And all schools, no matter where you live in Texas, must offer that $100,000 school tax exemption because that is a state law. Some of you may remember voting that in from a referendum last November where it was actually 40,000 and it was approved to go up to 100,000. So people saw that savings last year and will again this year in some cases. And basically what that exemption does is if your home is worth 300,000, say, then you're only going to pay tax that on 200,000 of that value. So that's how exemptions work. There are other exemptions depending on where you live in the county. There may be other exemptions offered by some of those other taxing jurisdictions I mentioned earlier. It just kind of depends on where you live. City of Houston, or whether you live in one of the other 30 some odd municipalities in the county, or whether you live where you may live in a mud district or some excuse me, some other special district. So the over 65 exemption is kind of an extension of the general resident homestead exemption. If you have a general resident homestead exemption, when you turn 65, you're eligible to tack on to that the over 65 exemption. And that you qualify for that for the entire year that you turn 65. So if you're turning 65 this year, your birthday is not until December 30th, you're still going to get it for the entire, you're going to get that exemption for your 2024 taxes. The disability exemption is similar to the, pretty much the same actually as the over 65 exemption, and that's extended to doesn't have anything to do with age. That's extended to individuals on their primary residence who have a disability and are unable to work. That basically can be defined by the Social Security benefits that you're receiving by being disabled, or some folks may not be receiving Social Security and they're still unable to work and they qualify for this disability exemption. We can use a physician statement that you can provide, and actually you can find the form for that on our website. The benefits of this over 65 exemption include When you turn 65, you get a school tax ceiling. So, in some cases, it may be called a freeze, or it's called several names for it, but basically, it freezes your taxes, your school taxes, that is, at the amount that you paid that year. You will never go over that amount. You could go lower if, in fact, the value falls on the property. It could be lowered, or it could, the only reason it can go above that typically is because you made substantial improvements to the property. Perhaps you remodeled and added additional square footage. Maybe you decided to put a swimming pool in the backyard. Basically, you've added substantial value to the home by doing that. So your value will have to be recalculated, readjusted just a bit before the freeze is placed on it again. As I mentioned, you do get all of the other exemptions we talked about with the general resident homestead, including the 10% cap. You are also eligible for a couple of things that you can pay. You're eligible for something called a tax deferral, which means you can opt to postpone payment of your taxes until the property changes hands, at which time it does become due. And you're allowed to pay taxes in installments without penalties if you're over 65. There may be also some other exemption privileges that might be granted by the individual jurisdictions for the over 65 property owner. The over 55 surviving spouse is just that, which if you're a married couple and the person who was eligible for the exemption on that property was already 65, he or she passes away, the surviving spouse, as long as they're 55 years of age or older on the date of that spouse's death, they can continue all of those benefits, all of those over 65 benefits. That includes the school tax ceiling. And by the way, the school tax ceiling is transferable when you move. There again could be some adjustments because you're moving into a more expensive home or whatever, but again, it will be reset and you will continue with that freeze. As I mentioned, you're also eligible for tax deferral, and you can pay the taxes in installments without penalties if you are over 65. One of the things I wanted to call your attention to, particularly for folks that are living in older neighborhoods, or maybe not older neighborhoods anymore, but just living in property that may have been owned by a parent, and they have siblings. Say it's heir, in other words, it is heir property. And previously, if you were not the owner of the property, but say you were part owner of it, say you had 3 other siblings, you may have been denied an exemption because you weren't the full owner. You may have been able to get, say, 25% of that exemption. In this case, if you the heirship exemption, they kind of made this a little bit easier and fairer for folks a few years ago, where you can, if you're the person living in the property and you're taking care of it, you obviously, then you can qualify that for that full 100% exemption, and it doesn't affect any ownership rights of any of the other co-owners of the property. So what that means is when you do fill out, if you go in and fill out that homestead application, general resident homestead exemption application, there's a such section where you would state if the property is an heir property and whether or not other heirs live on the property as well. And there's certain additional requirements that would be requested in order to get that 100% exemption. So the main point here is, if you are living in a property where you are not the sole owner, but you are an heir to the property, please go ahead and look at this. If you don't have the exemptions, more than likely we can help you get those. If you have any questions about that, do feel free to call HCAD. Our exemptions folks will be more than happy to walk you through this process to get that exemption so that you can keep that property well within the family. The immediate resident homestead exemption. I don't know how many out there listening are folks that are considering purchasing property right now, but if you do, previously you used to have to wait a full year before you qualified for any type of exemption relief. Now you can actually qualify for the a prorated exemption upon occupying the home. So if you moved in April of this year, for instance, you would be eligible for 9 months of of an exemption. So it would be prorated. Well, actually, you would be eligible for 8 months, and it would be prorated for from the date that you moved in. And that is in cases where the previous owner did not have exemptions on the home, or it was never exempted because maybe it was a rental property at the time. The exemption can be granted. If not, and it already had an exemption on it, then you're going to benefit anyway that year in your taxes from whatever that exemption was. You'll benefit for it for the rest of the year. So that is, and it's important to remember that the first year is going to be prorated. The second year, you will get established and receive the full exemption, and that's the year that's going to also establish your cap eligibility year, the base year from which they would figure that 10% cap each year. It's important to remember that you have to apply for that before the first anniversary of the date the property was acquired. So you want to make sure that you request this exemption within a year after purchasing the property, because once that first anniversary date passes by, you're no longer eligible. So how do you apply for these exemptions? So you can mail, obviously we have paper forms that you can use. You can actually go out online to fill it to an online form that you can fill out and send in. We also have a mobile app that you can download on your phones, either through Apple or Android, or you can email that information to us. Depending on when that is submitted, the processing time may take longer. Generally, it's going to be within, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's going to be within 60 to 90 days. However, it's very important that you submit everything at once, because if you don't include all of the information, and a lot of folks tend to forget to send in that driver's license with the application, or they forget, or they neglect to send in the spouse's driver's license, or whoever the co-owner is, and that can cause a delay, because we're going to send out a letter that asks you to provide the additional information. And then it kind of takes longer from that, because you kind of actually, once that information comes in, we start all over again with trying to apply that exemption to your account. Once it is applied, you are going to be notified through a letter. And for those that may feel that it, a little trepidation at filling out the forms, they're easy. And if you really want to, we provided some additional help on our website. There's a how-to video on completing the form that's available on our website. When you go out and actually look up the form, you can also click on that and actually follow along with the instructions as you fill it out. So it makes it even very much more easier for you to go ahead and submit that with the driver's license. So let's not forget getting that driver's license in uploading that as well. Now, one thing I did want to point out too is that if you're a new homeowner, or maybe not so new, you may actually get, there are folks out there that are sending something called, often they're called the designation of homestead, or they have some nice sound to them that they're going to save you money. If they're talking about your homestead exemption application, and they're going to ask you for a fee for that to get you this designation, which will save you money. I'm here to just caution you that it costs absolutely nothing to get that homestead exemption. You just go out, contact us, and send it out. Do not pay a fee to anyone to get your homestead exemption. It is free to the property owner. You just simply need to contact HCAD. So one of the other things that you might want to keep in mind too is that I mentioned the valuation notice. You can always get that from us annually as a homeowner. You also will get a card from us, which is typically mailed in December or January. And it usually comes in the mail around January, but it's called we call it the annual exemption confirmation card. And basically it's confirming the exemptions that you have on file with HCAD. It's always a good reminder. You might want to take a look at it. And if it says the exemptions you knew you had on there, then you go ahead and you can toss it in the drawer. If by some reason you don't recall getting it or you didn't get it in the mail, and you do qualify for those exemptions, you may want to contact us and just check to make sure that your exemptions are still on there, because this is kind of our audit each year in terms of making sure we know that the person living in that home that had the exemptions is still there. These cards are not forwarded. They are returned to the district, and once they're returned to the district, we will make effort to try to contact that homeowner. But if we're unable to, then those exemptions could eventually roll off. So just know that if you don't, once you get it, it's fine. Toss it in the drawer. If you don't remember getting it, it doesn't hurt to check with us, or you can go out online and make sure your exemption is still there, as you can see it on our website. I do want to mention for any folks out there who were affected by Hurricane Beryl, that there is something now called a temporary exemption for properties that may be damaged by a disaster. All it takes is for the governor to declare a disaster, and this exemption can kick in for those folks for eligible folks. So the one important thing to remember about that is if you had at least 15% of physical damage to your property, there is an application on our website that you can fill out. We do require some documentation. All of those instructions are on there, but good documentation, of course, includes photographs, any information, FEMA, insurance claims, and and what it's going to take to repair it. If it was the derecho, that deadline has already passed. However, the deadline to apply for Hurricane Beryl disaster exemption is coming up on October the 21st. So if you know of any folks that had some serious damage to their property, to their homes, please just kind of mention that to them and remind them that deadline is coming up. This is our website. We're at www.hcad.org, and some of the things I've talked about, the forms, for instance, you see under that second blue line, you can go out there and just click on and open up many of our forms. Again, many of them are fillable. Some you may have to print out and send it, but many of the more popular ones are printable. We also have, I mentioned about, you see this first one over here that says to the left, that says property search. You can always go out there. If our conversation today has you wondering, do I have my exemptions? You can't remember applying for them. You can always go out on our website and check. Look up, type in your address, your account number, and you'll see it when it comes up. You'll see usually under exemptions, on the exemptions column, it's going to say residential homestead. If you have the general resident homestead exemption. If you have an over 65 or a disability exemption, it's going to say residential, and then it will say multiple. Why does it say multiple? Because confidentiality is required by the tax code, by law. And so we can't just say identify that person as being over 65 or disabled on a public website. So it's going to say multiple, and you'll know what that means if you've applied for it. So this is our contact information. We're out here at 13013 Northwest Freeway at the Tidwell and Hollister exit. However, if you want to come visit us and our customer service desk is here. However, you can also call us, you can email us, our online information. As you can see here, if anyone needs to take a snapshot of that, this is the easiest way to contact us online. And again, our website is www.hcad.org. And that is it for my presentation. We're going to hang around and happy to answer questions. But I will now stop sharing. And now you're going to hear from the property tax assessor, from the tax assessor collector's office that will tell you what they do, which is kind of follows up on HCAD. I like to say all the time that we represent the two sides of the property tax coin. So let me go ahead and turn it over to Jamie Duong from the tax office. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mabel. Okay, let's do a share. Oh. Okay. Is it coming on?
Is this it? Okay, now it just popped up. Now put it in presentation mode.
Okay, let's do that. Yes.
Yep. You're good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Nia. Thank you, Mabel. That was a great presentation. Following on the appraisal side of property, it's, around this time of the year, usually you're preparing for tax bill, and we are indeed in the process of preparing and working with the taxing units on your tax bills. First of all, on behalf of your Harris County Tax Assessor Collector, Ms. Ann Harris Bennett, my name is Jamie Duong. I'd like to welcome you to this session of the Property Tax Workshop. With me on the chat line is Shay Pinkowski, who is our Assistant Manager for Customer Service. If you have questions, comments, or anything we can assist you broadly, please tap them into the chat, and Shay will be happy to evaluate and assist you further on that. Okay. As I'd mentioned earlier, Ms. Bennett and Neighborhood Recovery and the appraisal districts and our partners at AMOS puts together this presentation so that our goal is to provide a resource for you so that you can understand more about the various aspects of property ownership and how you can maximize your savings in that. And of course, this, as Mabel had shared earlier, exemptions as one of the keys to that. And I'll share with you some further as far as how you can benefit from the properties, okay? And reap off the bit as far as what you have from your property ownership. So without further ado, let's start the presentation. What do we do? Of course, we collect property tax on behalf of Harris County and around 80 taxing units in Harris County. We collect over $8 billion in taxes annually. And this comes from about 1.9 property accounts that range from your commercial property, your residential, down right to your mineral interest, okay, on your property. So as the appraisal district appraises the value of that, the tax office assess the taxes and collect the taxes that are due on that. Again, of the 80 taxing units, there are about over 500 taxing units in Harris County. We collect on behalf of about 80 of those, okay? And some of those being the city of Houston, Harris County, the Houston Independent School District, the Flood Control District, or the Department of Education, just a few. And of course, you understand that money is used as a resource to go back to assist the community with various needs. Now, as I'd mentioned earlier, we are in the process of working on your tax bill. Now, where we are right now is a phase called Truth and Taxation. Okay, the first part has already been covered by the appraisal district, where it is determination of the appraisal value. Now, the first phase is collaboration between the appraisal district and the property owners or the owner's agents. Okay, so you have, the property owner presenting his or her reasons as far as why it should be at a certain value. And of course, the appraisal district would say, as far as what the sales in the areas are, and they would come to an agreement on the value of the property. Now, the second part to where we are in that is determination of the tax rates. Now, the tax rates are set by the governing body of the taxing units. And as you may follow some recent news, last week, the Commissioner's Court for Harris County has set the tax rates. Now, this is part of the truth and taxation process in determining your tax rates. And, oh, excuse me, pardon me, my apologies. Now, once the tax rates are set, now, of course, Harris County is only one of the few that have set their tax rate. Like I said before, we represent over 80 taxing units, and we're still waiting for the rates and the exemptions amount to be approved by the governing body. Once that is taken into place, we will generate the tax bills. Okay, but this year the tax bill may come a little bit after the election, because if the taxing units are setting a tax rate that is higher than the amount that requires a voter approval, then it would have to be set on the election for voters' approval. And once the voter approves that rate, the tax office will take that rate and apply that to the taxable value in the calculations of the tax bill. So the tax bill will come in a little bit after the election. Now, there are some changes to the property tax laws that happened recently. For example, the first one being Harris County has increased the amount of exemptions for property that belongs to property owners that are over 65, disabled veterans, or 55-year-old surviving spouses of anyone in that category. They've increased the exemption amount from $250,000 to $320,000. Okay, so you go from 250 to 275, and now for tax year 2024, it is now $320,000 exemptions for property value. The city of Houston, again, for that same category of ownership that are over 65, disabled or disabled veterans that resides in the house as their primary residence, the city of Houston has allowed the exemption to increase from $160,000 to $260,000. Okay, and at the same point in time, last year, the school district has increased their general homestead exemptions from 20,000 to 40,000, and then currently at 100,000 in exemptions. So meaning these are the amount that are exempt from taxes. Any property value over that will be calculated in the tax assessment. And as Mabel had mentioned earlier, homestead exemptions, if you've purchased your home sometime in the middle of the year, you're eligible to apply for a prorated homestead as of the date of ownership beginning this year. Okay, so if you've recently purchased the home, please make sure you maximize that benefit, complete the paperwork and documentations to apply for your homestead residence. Some other changes that came about this year or since last year and is applied to this year's taxes. As I'd mentioned before, the increase in school tax exemptions from 25,000 to 40,000, now to 100,000 for the school portion of your tax bill. And the second part into that is a circuit breaker, what is a limitation on the increases in appraisal for non-residential property. So that is under $5 million. So for properties that are, your that doesn't have a homestead exemptions, or properties that are your rental or your income producing, or commercial buildings, anything that is non-residential with a valuation of less than $5 million, there is a cap on the appraisal of that. Okay, so there's a limit on the appraisal increase for that. And of course, you've probably seen it in last year's tax bill already, that there is what is known as a rate compression of your school taxes. So that requires basically a calculation of your school portion of your taxes at a different rate structure. Okay, what else are we looking at? Now, once we sent the tax bill out, like I said, this year it's going to be sent out after the election, whereas in prior years, the tax office strived to get the tax bill as soon as it is available, and it's usually, a little bit right after Halloween Day, or right before the end of October, or at latest before November begins. However, this year, as we have to wait for the results of certain elections, rate elections, we have to wait until the election's over to get the result to do the calculations on your tax bill. So I ask that you be patient, and if you still haven't received your tax bill by mid-November or December, check online our website and to see if it is available for review and access online. And that website is www.hctax.net. Now, when you get your tax bill, one of the first things you want to look at is verify that the information, the ownership information is correct, and also to verify that any applicable exemptions that you have is shown on your tax bill. For example, if this is your primary residence, check to make sure that it says on there homestead exemptions, okay? Or if you're over 65, on your original bill, it will show the exemptions on there, okay? Now, for whatever reason, if you don't see it there, check to make sure. If not, reach out to us, and or even check on the appraisal district's website to verify, okay? And if the ownership information is incorrect, or the ownership has changed, or you're requiring requesting a change in the mailing of the tax bill for future tax years, of course, check our website, check HCAD's website, and go up there and do any correction form that's needed for ownership, and corrections form to update the mailing address, because this is how we are able to reach out to you. You need to notify us of the changes. Okay. Now, earlier I'd mentioned about homestead exemptions, and that's being one of the benefits of home ownership. This chart gives you an example of a comparable visual as far as the benefit of exemptions, and making sure that if you qualify for an exemption, follow through with it. Okay, because this shows you the benefit. We're taking an average homestead, or an average residential property in Harris County, or specifically in the city of Houston as well, with the average market value of about $325,000. Now, for this certain properties, without any exemptions, without applying or qualifying for any exemptions, you're looking at a tax bill of about $7,100. Okay. Now, for this same property, if this property is the owner's primary residence, well, then, and the owner has completed the process, the documentations required, and submit everything to the appraisal district, and have received approval for a homestead exemption, then this tax bill is decreased substantially. So it goes from about $7,100 down to a little bit over $5,500. So you're getting about a third in savings due to the general homestead exemption. Okay. Now, moving further on benefit, for the benefits of ownership, if the property owner is over 65 disabled veterans, or a surviving spouse of anyone in that category that is over 55 years of age. And this same property where they have applied for their over 65 exemption, you go from a tax bill of 7,100 to a new tax bill of a little bit over $2,000. So dramatic savings that's there. So if you so where you are residing right now, and if you qualify for the homestead exemptions or the over 65 exemptions, we ask that you make sure you go through the process and complete the process so that you can have that exemption on your account, so that it does help reduce your tax bill. Okay, what other stuff reduces tax bills? One of the he'd mentioned earlier was tax limitations. Tax limitation is a freeze. It's a freeze on your property tax for property owners that are over 65, disabled veterans, or surviving spouses that are over 55 years of age, if anyone in that category. Now, if this is your homestead residence, your primary residence, then once you file the over 65 exemptions with the appraisal district, this limitation is attached on to the school tax bill, okay? It does not wipe out the school tax of the portion. What it does is it freezes the school portion of the taxes, okay? The logic behind that is once a property owner reaches 65 years of age, according to the legislatures, more than likely their children would have already finished school. So it freezes the amount of taxes that they pay to the school for that. Now, it doesn't eliminate, but it freezes the school taxes portion of that. Now, the other jurisdictions that have authority to collect tax, those do not freeze. Okay, so just the school portions, only if the taxing unit that opt for that tax limitations would be shown on that. Another benefit for property owners that are over 65, disabled veterans, or 55 years of age, surviving spouses of anyone in that category, is the ability to defer your taxes. Okay. Now, what is a tax deferral? A tax deferral is a postponement of your property tax. It is not a cancellation of your taxes. Let me repeat. By applying for a deferral, it does not cancel your taxes. A deferral basically helps you reduce the penalties and interest on the account. On a normal property that doesn't have a tax deferral, the penalties and interest accumulates as on schedule. For example, it starts off at 7%, 9%, 11%, and so on and so forth. And it also has additional attorney's fees added to that. Now, if the account qualifies for a tax deferral, then any unpaid taxes on that account will only accrue a 5% interest on for that entire year. Okay, you don't have penalties as far as attorney's fees, and you don't have additional interest assessed to the account. Now, the deferral on that continues onto the account as long as the owner maintains that as their primary residence. For example, that deferral is removed or taken off once the owner, let's say, passes away, or that property changes ownership, or the owner sells that property. Well, once that transaction is complete, then any unpaid taxes the owner would have, or the new heirs would have 180 days to pay back those taxes at the rate that where the deferral was calculated. Okay, but at the 181 day, the full penalty and interest will be assessed on any unpaid taxes. Now, how do you apply for this tax deferral? Of course, you go through the appraisal district's website at www.hcad.org. There's a form on there to apply for a tax deferral. It's an affidavit. You need to complete that form, have it notarized, and return that to the appraisal district with the required documentations. For example, the driver's license or any proof of information that is required for that. Now, we have 2 words of cautions for you when you apply for the tax deferral. You know, I've always told our property owner that, you know, the tax deferral is sort of like an insurance. By applying for that tax deferral, it doesn't mean that you can't pay your taxes on time. Okay. Having a tax deferral is like having an insurance. Okay. It's there if you need it. If you don't need it, you know, a little bit different is that the tax deferral doesn't cost you anything if you don't need it. For example, once you've been approved for the tax deferral, once you get your tax bill in middle of November and you say, oh, this amount, I can pay that. So, and you feel like you want to write your check to pay for that, there's nothing wrong with that. You're able to pay that full amount, no penalty, no interest at all assessed for payment that are made on time. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, if you're all going on vacation and the tax bill came into the mail and you don't have access to that. Well, and by February comes, you forget. Guess what? Instead of having the regular penalty and interest assessed on the unpaid taxes, you know, in February, it would have been 7% penalty and interest. Well, because you have a tax deferral in the account, guess what? The assessment is 5% per annum. Okay. Or it goes further. Let's say it goes all the way to June, goes all the way to July or August, and the tax bill hasn't been paid. For property accounts with the tax deferral on that, again, like, as I said before, the penalty, the interest on that is only 5% of the unpaid balances. Now, the second thing we want to tell you is if you're applying for a tax deferral, before you apply, consult with your mortgage company, if you still have a mortgage company on your property, and let them know that you intend on applying for the tax deferral, and make sure that they're okay with that, because there are certain mortgages that does not accept tax deferral, because, you know, they still have a lien hold on the property, and having a tax deferral means can alter your mortgage contract. So please make sure you discuss this with your mortgage company if you intend on filing the tax deferral. And I say 2 things, but actually there should be one more third thing is if you have been approved for a tax deferral, you know, we always encourage our senior citizens or anyone, property owners that qualify for the deferral, make sure you let your family know that you have a tax deferral, so that in the event where you're not here and they have to handle your estate, your property, they know to reach out to the tax office and say, hey guys, you know, this property just changed ownership. Let me know how much is due on the taxes, so that they can make the payment within that 180 days without incurring additional penalties and interest. Because once that 181st day arrive, the full normal penalty and interest would be recalculated onto the account. Okay. If you have further questions on that, reach out to us. We'll be happy to walk you through that process. Okay. What if you don't qualify for the deferral and you have unpaid taxes? What do? No worries. Reach out to us and we'll help you with the payment plan. The payment plan can range from anywhere from 12 months all the way out to 36 months. Okay. You can start requesting that plan as early as February the 1st. And what's the purpose of the payment plan? It is to help you avoid collection fees. Okay, and it helps you reduce the attorney's fees that are on your account. Okay, now, and most importantly, having a payment plan and sticking with the payment plan helps you avoid foreclosure of the property. Okay, reach out to us and let us know that you'd like to set up a payment plan. And like I say, even if you set up a 36-month payment plans, by the time the 6th month comes by and, you know, you got your income tax return refunds, you decide you're going to pay it off, there is no additional penalties for that. Okay, that contract can be paid off early. So very beneficial for folks who have unpaid balances on their property tax. You know, just reach out to us, let us know that you want to apply for a payment plan. We'll help you set one up. Okay, what other options do we have? Well, if you are senior citizens over 65 years of age, property owner, you're a disabled veterans or disabled property owner, or your surviving spouse that is 55 years of age, of anyone in that category, you may be able to go on the quarterly payment plan to pay off your taxes at no additional interest or fees, as long as you make the payment on time. Now, before you are able to apply for the quarterly payment plan, your property account must have already been approved for that over 65 exemptions and coded by the appraisal district. Okay, again, if last week you've just sent in your application for the over 65 exemptions, and then this week you call us, you say, hey, I want to go onto the payment plan for my taxes, for the last 3 years, I have them unpaid. Now I want to go on payment plan. And, no, that coding, that over 65 coding would have already been approved by the time you reach out to the tax office for the quarterly payment plan. If it is not on the account, or if it hasn't been reviewed and approved by the appraisal district, the tax office cannot set up that quarterly payment plan for you until it's been coded in the system. Now, it's very simple. Once you've been approved for the plan, how does this work? Well, what it does is it takes the amount of taxes you owe, split it into 4 equal payments. And as long as you make each of these payments on time, there are no other fees that are assessed to that. For example, payment is required at the end of January, the end of March, the end of May, and the end of July. Okay, so as long as you've submitted your payment and we process that by the end of each of those months, then your payment plan is in effect, and it carries with 0 interest, and it carries with no collection fees. Okay, but very important, make sure your property is coded with the over 65, or that you've been approved for the over 65 exemptions by the appraisal district. Okay, so if you're not over 65, you're not disabled or anyone in that category, what other benefits, or how do you handle taxes that are unpaid? Well, first of all, you can reach out to our office, ask for a payment plan. We have various types of payment plans. For example, the first one is being a homestead plan. Okay, the property that you're applying to make a payment plan for has to be your primary residence. Of course, the terms on that is 1% interest per month plus the initial penalty month on that. You can request a payment plan from 12 months all the way out to 36 months. And of course, the payment is due at the end of each month. Now, what if your property that's not a primary residence, that's not your homestead, and it doesn't have the over 65 exemptions, and then you receive the bill that says, hey, you've got taxes due. What other options do you have? Well, you have other payment plans, and this payment plan works similarly to the homestead plan. However, it does accrue penalty and interest on the normal. Okay. However, it does help you reduce the attorney's fees. Okay, so the benefit in having a payment plan is that it helps you reduce the penalties, and it also helps you to have a structured payment so that you are not far behind on your taxes. Like I say, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions, or you may have concerning payment plans. Now, what are some of the payment options that you have? Well, the easiest way to make the payment is online. At www.hctax.net. You can go onto that website and type in your search for a property account number, and then input in the amount of payment you'd like to make for that. Okay. Now, online payment, we accept e-checks, credit cards, but no cash. Okay. For online payments, we encourage our property owners, to make sure that you understand e-checks are free, but if you're using a credit card to make your payment, well, the credit card company will assess their own costs for the benefit of using using their, I guess, convenience to pay for your taxes. Okay. And the credit card fees that the company charge, not the tax office, the company charge is 2.45% of the amount spent. Okay. A second option that you may have as far as making payment is by mail. And if you plan on mailing your payment at the end of January, please, 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 please do not wait to the very last day to go drop off your payment into the blue box. Chances are, if the blue box mailbox have already been picked up and the post office personnel doesn't come by until tomorrow to pick up your envelope that you've dropped off in the blue box, well, guess what? That payment could possibly be a late payment, and it would probably be assessed a late fees on that. So if you plan on making payment by mail and you plan on waiting to the very end to make that payment, please reconsider and make your payments about 3 or 5 days before the due date, so that that payment has a postmark that is on time or earlier than February 1st, which is the traditional delinquency day. Okay, because even if you drop your payment, your check payment into the blue box, the morning of, and for some reason, the morning of January 31st, and for some reason, that postmark, that envelope that comes to us has a postmark that is February the 1st, automatically your account is assessed a penalty and interest fees on that. Okay, so check out the options carefully. And the third options, as far as payment, your taxes, would be paying by phone at 713-274-2273, and then you key in your information and it'll pull up the account. Once you confirm for payment, again, the type of payments that we accept on the phone are credit cards, which carry a 2.45% fees on that, or your debit card, your credit cards, and also e-checks. Now, e-checks are free. There are no costs to using e-checks if you're making your payment by phone. Okay. Again, follow the prompts closely, and if you have questions, you need help, reach out to us. Now, what if you're paying cash? Well, if you're paying cash, then do not mail anything in. Just take the cash, go to your nearest branch, and they will assist to process that payment for you. Okay, so something that we learned throughout, and this option has always been with the tax office. However, recently with the last several storms that come in, we'd like to remind the public that you can request electronic tax statements for your property. Okay, having an electronic statement ensures that once the tax bill is available, and we mail out that tax bill for you, you'll get that in your inbox. Okay, it doesn't have to wait for the mailman to come in, or it doesn't have to wait for the water to recede, so that you can get your tax bill. Having a e-tax statement cuts out a lot of the frustrating process that you may have waiting for your tax bill or going through the mail looking for them. Okay, so sign up for it, get your property statement online, and get it delivered to your inbox. Now, how do I register for? How do you get electronic statement? Well, you need to register for the electronic statements, and we encourage you to register before the cutoff date. The cutoff day is October the 15th of this year, so you have a few weeks. Please, it's very easy. Go online to www.hctax to register to get your electronic tax bills. Okay, so some important dates to remind you of. If you've heard earlier, of course, January 31st, this is the last day to make a payment on your taxes without penalty and interest. Now, what happened if you didn't make the full payment or you pay and there was some money left over? Well, if the next day is February the 1st and the payment hadn't been made, that account will be subject to penalty and interest. And the collections and attorney's fees are added to taxes on the business property on April the 1st. So if you have unpaid, again, as I mentioned before, if you have unpaid taxes for business personal properties, please reach out to us so that we can help you with the payment plan before April the 1st, because once April the 1st comes around, that's when the assessment for attorney's fees is added to your business property. July 1st is when, again, any unpaid taxes that are on the account will have the attorney's fees added to that. And as mentioned before, having a payment plan helps you reduce the attorney's fees, okay? And of course, normally during October, we would have already mailed out the tax bill, but because this year is an unusual year, so we would have to wait for the election to be over with before we can generate your tax bill. So wait for your tax bill usually around November or December. And I always tell folks, if toward the end of the year and you still don't have it online, go to our website, check the status on that. It may still be pending certification by the review board, okay? But check our website and let us know how we can help you, or if you have any questions regarding this presentation. As always, our office is open. We are available online at www.hctax.net. We are also available by phone at 713-274-8000. Or if you'd like to email us, our email address is tax.office@hctx.net. Okay, you email us at tax.office@hctx.net, and we'll do our best to answer your questions as expeditiously as possible. Now, remember, during peak season time, that wait time may be extended a little bit further, but let us know how we can assist you. We're here to help. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you reserving some time for us and joining us today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mabel and Miss Jamie. There are a few questions in the chat. However, there were some that were emailed to me too, and I want to go over those really quick first. If I am turning 65 in February 2025, when do I need to file for the senior or the over 65 exemption?
That would be in February of 2025. As soon as she reaches her birthday month, I would go ahead and file.
Okay. And I saw this question also in the chat. Does this mean that seniors after a certain or are seniors after a certain age exempt from all taxes?
Oh, I think Alicia explained that one in the chat, but basically, no, it really depends on, actually, it depends on the value of your property. When a property owner, when you reach 65, you become eligible for additional exemptions. Those exemptions could, if the exemption amount surpasses the value of your property, then you would not pay anything. Say, I think what the county now is 320.
Well, let me clarify that a little bit. Several factors. First of all, correct, Mabel, that would be depending upon the value of the property. Second factor, it depends upon the use of the property. And third factor, it would depend upon the governing body, the taxing units, if they would allow that exemptions. Okay, so so the value of your property, you can't be in River Oaks and say I'm paying zero taxes. Okay, there's certain values that's there. So the value of your property, just as I've mentioned in my slides, for example, the county has approved additional increased exemption amount for properties that are in Harris County, but only for the 5 taxing units. Now, normally on standard tax bill, you have your schools, you have your emergency districts, you have your, if you're living out a little bit further from the city, you may have your municipalities that delivers the waters and the services. They may not approve that amount of exemption. So you're over 65, they may not give you the $320,000. They may give you $10,000 or may give you $5,000 as an exemption amount from your property value. Okay, and also would also be the use of your property. Now, if this is, yes, it's a house, but if this is your second home and it's not your primary residence, then you are not exempt from the taxes. The over 65 exemption is reserved for that property as a primary residence, and it's reserved for property owners that are over 65, disabled veterans, or the 55 years older surviving spouses. Okay, but it does not bring your taxes to zero in most cases.
Right. And I think in some cases, people may have heard that from individuals, but it actually does have something to do with the value of the property, if they're not paying taxes.
Correct. I mean, I've seen in rare cases now where the properties that are, gosh, the owner's been there for the last 40 plus years, and the property is $25,000, and where the amount, even the municipalities and stuff, the exemption amount is greater than that, but to call it an exemption is a misnomer, but we still have to go by that.
In other words, stop listening to the street committee. It depends on yeah, everybody's different. Nobody's exactly the same. Yeah,
Correct.
I hate when folks get to talking about, oh no, it's not correct because I know mine is this and mine is this and yada yada yada. Everybody's situation and circumstance and property values are not the same. So you better verify. Don't just automatically think, oh, I don't owe any more taxes, and then here you go with a tax bill, and you'll be mad because you just thought that it applied to you as well. That's not necessarily.
We have people get angry at us. This is, I'm over 65. Why are you trying to tax me? So we have to explain the whole process to them.
Indeed. How long can payments be deferred from taxes? From payment of taxes. How long?
As long as you own the property, as long as the property owner still owns and reside the property as their primary residence, and as long as the deferral ends either of two process. One is by change of ownership, where you sell the property, or you give it to an heir, where the owner passes away and it's becomes an estate and is transferred to an heir. That ends the deferral.
Okay. And I know that Alicia did a wonderful job of answering these questions or addressing these things in the chat, but I'm just going through a few of them that I pick out because people that are online are, they can't see the chat and they don't know, and they may have the exact same question. So, why is my appraisal value the exact same amount as my market value if I have exemptions?
You want me to read that? Because I know, Alicia, let's see. I'm looking for that particular question. I know it was in here somewhere, but essentially, it means that your taxable value may not have increased beyond that 10% cap for a while. I know this happened to me. And so, as I mentioned in my presentation, that market value is kind of always chasing that appraised value, because as it goes up. So what happened is with an established homestead exemption, it didn't increase beyond the previous year. So that that value is going to go up. Now, it could also be that they are if they did the immediate homestead exemption last year, then for this particular year, they don't have an appraisal cap, so it's going to be the same amount. The cap sets this year, the year after you get that immediate homestead exemption, and so that's the year the cap sets. So you would see, in the event of a market value increase, you would see over 10%, you would see that appraised value being lower. Does that explain it?
Yeah. Okay.
You can also, and I think Alicia also mentioned that, if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to fill out our web form and get a specific answer related to your specific property that they can look at and tell you the exact reason why.
Okay. If I complete a tiny house addition in November, will it be considered in the very next January appraisal?
It should be. When you remodel or demo or build, yes, chances are you have filed a permit. Hopefully you have filed a permit with the city, so it would then be reflected in time for the to show as we do the reappraisals the following year. For example, it's something that's going to be picked up on for that January 1st reappraisal date.
For 2025,
For
on
the
the 2025, not anything added to the 2024 bill.
No, it would not be added to 2024.
Okay. All righty. Let's see, Alicia.
While you're looking through those, can I just briefly mention something I forgot to mention earlier? In terms of, I mentioned about the appraisal review board, which is that group of folks you would bring your evidence to have your value changed if you did not reach an agreement in your informal hearing, which the review board was created by the Texas legislature as a sort of like an independent judicial review of property owner protest. And as I mentioned before, HCAD presents their case, come in and present yours, and then that group would make the decision, kind of like a jury of your peers. I did want to say that we are currently accepting applications. HCAD does the applications for people that are interested in serving on next year's appraisal review board, where you can sit in on those panels, either in panels of 3 or single panel. And applications are now being accepted. You can find that information on our website. And just for clarification purposes, the ARB is not a part of the appraisal district, although we provide them with administrative services. The ARB members, however, this year are going to be selected by members of the HCAD board. So all you have to do is be a current resident of Harris County, and have lived here for more than at least 2 years, up to date on your property taxes, or show that it's being paid under an installment agreement, and you cannot have been a previous ARB member for 3 years. Again, those applications are available on our website. And and there is a per diem that they are paid to serve on this board. So if you know of anyone who is interested, please feel free to call their attention to it.
Is the process kind of similar in other counties as well, or is there is there something different that they need to do, like in Fort Bend County?
So I really can't say. Fort Bend may be the same. There were some changes made in terms of the folks who are going to be serving on the appraisal review board this year are, as I mentioned before, are going to be selected by the members of our board of directors, and at least 2 of the members who were elected, if you recall the election for appraisal review board members in April and in May and the runoff in June, at least 2 of those elected members have to also approve appraisal review board members this year. So that's a little bit different, and that's specifically for counties of over 75,000 in Texas. And that was something that was created as a part of Senate Bill 2 by the legislature. So there is a little bit of a different selection process, but I think the rules are generally the same in terms of who's eligible to serve on them.
Okay, since we're talking about protests, let me stick with these questions. Does HCAD offer a course on how to protest the property tax?
I did mention that we do provide those workshops in the spring. That's pretty much what we do in terms of when we will actually have appraisers, senior appraisers who conduct the workshops either online, and we actually have them in person out in the communities as well. We usually have at least a dozen or more between the end of March and the middle of May prior to the protest deadline. So we post that calendar on our website, and we actually have those here on AMOS as well. So there will be at least 3 of them here, at least 2 or 3 of them that will be online here with AMOS on the AMOS programming too. So yes, we do.
So if they go to hcad.org under videos, they could find some
No,
of these
it'll
videos.
actually, we posted on the front page of our website where you can click on the schedule, and when it's out there, it's not, it won't be out there until, usually we post that calendar in late March or mid to late March each year for that protest workshop series.
Okay. What is land-driven value? And how do you protest that increase? I don't know if you want to go into a lot of detail about protesting right now,
And
but
that's one of the things that we typically explain in the workshop. But essentially, your land is worth more than dwelling on it for various reasons.
and that's in a lot of communities. A
Exactly.
lot of.
And particularly in areas that are being redeveloped.
Mhm. Okay, I wasn't quite understanding this question, Ms. Foreman. How are taxes calculated once a property is deemed to be a life estate and then transferred to new owners after the death of the prior ownership?
Well, the rate, the rate remains the same. The exemptions remain, unless the exemption is removed or changed. Having the life estate versus the normal, it's just the name change for us. It doesn't change the taxes because the property is still where it is. The use is still where it is. Now, as far as changes, it may be reflected differently on your personal income tax calculations at the end for the estate, but as far as your property taxes, it's just as that.
Okay.
And what I probably know from the CPA is that it takes the beginning base as far as when that life estate was established for that property. But your property taxes, as long as your exemptions is still there, you qualify and you meet that and exemptions on that, we use the same rate that we use for all the properties in that jurisdictions to calculate your taxes.
Okay. And then I'm also going to read Alicia's response here in the chat from the HCAD's side of the process. So remember, I mentioned we're 2 different sides of the same coin, but for HCAD's side of the process, we're going to need the copy of that life estate deed as well as the person's death certificate. That's to get the process going, to be able to make any ownership change. So the deceased owner's exemptions are going to expire at the end of the year anyway, of the year that they pass. Remember, January 1st starts a whole new tax year. So those changes would be reflected. The following would need to be reflected the following year. So using 2024 as an example, if the owner passes in 2024, the exemption or exemptions would be able to remain, and the tax office would calculate those taxes with those exemptions for that year. Then for the new year, the exemptions would no longer be applied. So the taxes at the end of 2025, next year, are going to be calculated on the full taxable value that's assessed for that year. So she had mentioned that in earlier for what HCAD, for how HCAD figures into that process.
Okay. I don't want to dig too far down into inherited property and probate issues, Miss Foreman, because I think Lisa with the Texas Legal Services Center can kind of can do a little bit deeper dive when it comes to life estates and deeds and passing along heirship and things of that nature. So I don't want to get into answering too many legal or getting to, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get too deep into that.
We did get a question again, and it's always worth explaining again. Explain the difference between having a deferment and an exemption.
Mm-hmm.
And an exemption is a discount on your property taxes that you get as a result of your qualification of it being your primary residence or you're over 65. That exemption is based on your qualifications for that. A deferment is an additional process that you can apply for and receive once you're over 65. The important thing to keep in mind that a deferment simply means you are postponing the taxes. If you have an exemption, that's your discount for the year. You're never gonna have to pay that back on the only time that, as long as you continue to own and occupy that property. If you are deferring your property, you're merely postponing the taxes. You will not have to pay. No collections will ever be levied against you. You simply pay that 5% interest annually. However, once the property changes hands, once you pass away or sell the property, then those taxes become due. They're going to be attached either to the property, or anyone moving into the property would then pay those deferred taxes. And so it's important to a lot of people to remember those are two separate things, because we have far too many seniors out there who confuse that issue and won't apply for the over 65 because they think that their heirs are going to have to pay that back. They don't pay back the exemptions, the over 65 exemption discounted amount, but they will end up paying back the deferment.
Okay.
So we just need to make sure people understand the difference between the two.
Okay. Can you re-review or kind of re-explain the temporary disaster exemptions again?
Oh, sure. The temporary disaster exemption is something that you can apply for, and if granted, you will receive temporarily exemptions based on the physical damage done to your dwelling as a result of, in this case, it would be Hurricane Beryl. There is a threshold that has to be met. However, for you to qualify, it has to be at least 15%. The damage has to be at least 15% of the value of the property. You have until, I think I said late October to file for that. And then that's going to be determined by our residential property division folks.
Okay. Trying to check Facebook here to make sure, or to see if we've got questions. Okay. I don't see anything else online here, and I think you addressed everything else that I had. I did have a question for Jamie though about the increase or the potential, well, actually not the potential, the increase that the county voted on. From my understanding, it was actually already approved. It wasn't a significant enough increase that it had to go to the voters. Is there additional, because I know that there's the flood control increase that's
Yes.
proposed. So is that one, or are they both going to the voters?
Well, the Harris Commissioners, the Harris County Commissioners represents 5 taxing units together. Okay, flood control is one of them. However, the flood control amount is greater than the increase of 8% that requires the voters to approve on that. Okay, so the flood control segment of that does require that being put up front for the voter to say, yes, I approve this increase, or no, I won't. Okay, that portion of it. Now, the one for the commissioners that approve for Harris County, for the port, for the Department of Education's, now those are within the, so according to Senate Bill 2, okay, normally for the voter approved rate, if it's the increase is less, it's within 3.5%. However, this year, because we had disasters, natural disasters upon natural disasters, the law allows them to go up to 8%, not 8% taxes, but 8% increase. Okay, 8% increase from the standard rate. So they would go up to the standard rate plus the 8% to make up for the costs of the disasters. Now, those other four, because it's at that 8% and not greater than the 8%, so it doesn't have to go to the voters for approval. Okay. However, the flood control does require the voter approval because it's higher than that 8%.
Now, is this ongoing at this rate? If it increases by the 8%, is this ongoing, or is it only for 2024?
Well, like I say, every tax year stands by itself, and every tax year rates stands by itself. So let's say next year, we pray that there is no natural disasters, and next year the commissioners review the costs of maintaining the county again, and the cost is less, then they can opt to vote for a lower tax rate. Okay, and at that point in time, it doesn't require them to go to the voter for approval to go in a lower tax rate. So, however, if there is an election, if there is a natural disaster, and they say, hey, we may have to go up increasing the rates again, and they can legally go up to that tip of that 8% and not have to go to the voters.
And in addition to the one that they just did this year, and
Yes.
then another one potentially next year.
Yes. That is why it is so critical, okay, that in all of these workshops that I do on behalf of Ms. Bennett, we always tell the audience, and we always tell property owners, you gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention, and you have to ask the questions, to the governing body, not just Harris County, but if you're mud control district, something I've mentioned early years ago when the interest rate was low, was, hey, jurisdictions, are you taking advantage of the low interest rate and refinancing these bonds that we have? Because that makes a difference on what the total cost of maintenance for the property is. So pay attention, and don't just, wait until you get your tax bill to say, hey, my taxes are too high. Chances are when you get your tax bill, everything's already determined. I mean, like this week, we are on the third week of September. And last week, that was the hearing. That was the truth in taxation hearing for Harris County. Okay, and like I say, I stay apolitical on this. I just want people to be informed. I want property owners to understand, that how much taxes is assessed on them depends on several factors. Three main factors. The first factor, as the appraisal district and I present, the first factor is the value of the property. Take control by, if you believe the value is high, protest. The second factor being, the tax rates. Ask the governing body, what are you using my taxes for? What are you using my taxes for? And do we need to spend the money on this? Okay. And the third factor impacting, your tax bill is your exemptions. Have you applied for that exemptions? We've actually seen customers or clients that come into the tax office and they've been over 65 for the last 7 years and they still haven't applied for their exemption. So these three factors are the main determinants of how much is your tax bill.
Hmm.
Sorry, kind of get long-winded from
No,
that.
no, that's okay. It just kind of, it's like jarring all kinds of little thoughts in my head here that I'm, trying to wrap it around. Okay.
Yeah, and comparing because part of that property tax bill pays for some of the costs where in other states they have income taxes. The state of Texas doesn't have income taxes, so property tax bill makes up that gap in that segment of that.
So if the increase, so let me back up a little bit. Protests, valuations were already done, protests were already completed. The tax bill is supposed to come out in November, December sometime. And now this bill for November, December is going to have an additional 8%, or is going to be increased up to the 8%.
No, okay, so gosh, I think, for example, I'll give a number. So City of Houston rate is, I believe, 0.36 something. Okay, so it'll be 0.36 times 8%.
Okay.
Okay, and the tax rate goes out to 5 decimal digits. So it'll go 0.36, 3555, something like that, So it'll still be that, but it's just an increase of 8% of that tax rate.
Of that tax
Not,
rate.
yes,
Okay.
not
8%.
not like your.
I'm thinking you said
Yeah.
8% of the
Oh,
value.
no,
Like,
no, no.
wait a minute, like 8%. You're
funny
gonna go
was
up a
my
whole
sister
8%.
actually, yeah.
I'm like, that almost
No,
defeats
no,
the
no.
purpose of the exemption. I mean, if
No, no. The day that the commissioner
oh gosh, okay.
approved that rate, my sister actually called me at office and she was screaming and yelling, just like any upset customer. She says, "What are you guys doing with 8% tax rate? I don't even get a rate increase. I don't even get a pay rate increase of even 4%. Okay, you guys are getting 8%." I'm like, "No, ma'am, that is not what it is." So
Okay.
it's 8% of
That
the tax
rate.
rate.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
Got it.
yes. I mean,
Right
now
now,
if somebody gets an 8% raise, I would question that. Okay. If somebody gets an 8% paycheck raise, I would question that. Okay.
Well, I mean, even for like the layperson, if somebody's just kind of hearing about it or they only seeing the clip, because even me looking at it online, Harris County moved forward with 8% property tax increase. That's
Correct.
all it says. It
Very
didn't.
misleading.
So I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. That doesn't require voter approval. You're increasing it 8%, and like, okay, so now I got it. Now I got it.
Yes. Yes. Very, very, very misleading. Correct.
What'd you say, Miss Mabel?
Of the tax rate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't say of the tax rate. That was the headline. So that's all I was looking at. Okay, so great.
But it made you read though.
Absolutely. So I'm like, I need to get a better understanding of this, and even me trying to even explain it to other people. Yeah, I need to know what we're talking about here. So
Oh man, I was upset too when my sister called me with that. I was like, yeah, they could have done better job coverage of, letting the people know this. Better yet, they should have had the viewership participate in the hearing process. That's where it matters. Not reading it on the newspaper afterward, but getting to the hearing and reading it afterwards, said, hey, asking the questions. Like if you walk to your bank and say, I'd like a 8% increase on my bank account, your bank's going to ask you, what do you intend on using this loan for? Right?
And if anyone is
Exactly.
interested in what the tax rates are for all the various jurisdictions, you can also find those out on our website, as well as the tax assessor collector's website.
I think Alicia also put it in the chat. But I will also include it in the link that I send out on that with all the other resources. I'll put that jurisdiction, that link for that website on there as well.
And like I say, our goal is not to participate, not to have an opinion on, what the tax rates or so is. Our goal is to give you the information so that you can think and see how it applies to you. And, if you have questions on that, always reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you.
Okay. And
And
then
I'm glad you asked that question. It's a great question.
yeah, indeed. All right. I think that's just about it. I've just gone through the chat again here and also making sure that I have the link for the disaster exemption. If someone has additional questions about that, I'll make sure that is included as well. And you did say the deadline is October the 21st to
Yeah,
apply for the disaster exemption.
yeah, that was that what I said? Hold on. Yeah.
Oh, Alicia put it in the chat. That
Okay,
is
perfect.
uh let me
21st.
let me copy that so I can put it in my notes here. Okay. All right. I believe that is everything. I don't see anything else. I don't see anything else online. Think we're done.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate you listening. And
All right.
hopefully you can be of some help answering questions among your neighbors and friends.
Indeed. If at the very
Share
least,
the information.
yeah, share the information for sure. At the very least, share the recording of this presentation. If you'd like to go back and watch it again, I will be sending out the link to everyone to go back and do just that. We do ask that you pay it forward and share it with your other family members, coworkers. And if you can't explain exactly, some of the information that was covered, feel free to come back next month. We are here the the fourth Wednesday of each month with the most up-to-date information. So who's to say what's going to change between now and in next month? So you might want to come back and just to see, hey, what are the updates? What's going on? What just changed, or what has gotten increased, and what do I need to know about, that kind of stuff. Feel free to join us as often as you like. And again, invite other people to participate or to join us as well. So with that being said, tomorrow, we have our foreclosure, our reverse mortgage and home equity foreclosure prevention workshop, that is tomorrow, done by our AMOS partner with Lone Star Legal Aid. So they will be on at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And then next week we've got coming up a summation of probate matters. If you have other probate questions and kind of really want to do a deeper dive into the probate process and what that is like, Judge Pamela, I can't think of her last name. The probate judge is going to be presenting that information next Tuesday. We have the Money, Health, and Wealth about savings and establishing a rainy day fund. That's on Wednesday, and then the wills and advanced legal planning next Thursday. So the October schedule is in its final approval, and I will be including that with the link of the presentation so that you can go ahead and mark your calendars and be ready to receive even more information from all of our AMOS partners. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Miss Mabel. Thank you, Jamie, Shay, and Alicia. Thank you all very much for your participation and your time. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. You take care of yourselves, you stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
Very good.
All
Thank you,
righty.
everyone.
Everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.